Many thanks for joining us here on Newsdesk. My name is Ernest Mino. Let's settle for the details now. Former President John Dramani Mahama has called on government to refrain from what he describes as political or parochial considerations in the fight against the novel coronavirus. This follows concerns over discrepancies in the data surrounding the COVID-19 tests conducted under the aggressive testing during the 3-week lockdown. In a televised address Thursday evening, Mr. Mahama expressed worry over inadequate PPEs and government's mitigation policies.
Not a day passes without emails, phone calls, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and WhatsApp messages from nurses and other medical staff from facilities across the country reaching out to my office and pleading for protective gear, PPEs. Right from the start of this pandemic, public education and awareness has been poor. Government should speed up the initiative of manufacturing locally made masks, which can be washed and pressed or ironed and reused again. These should be handed out free of charge to the public. Strong public education on the safe use of masks must accompany this initiative. One gets the sense that perhaps because of the current low mortality in the cases we have confirmed so far, the President might be seeking to rely on what is called herd immunity as a strategy to fight COVID-19. But I dare say this is dangerous. We must remember that there are reports of reinfection occurring in some cases elsewhere, and also prolonged immunity to the virus has not yet been proven at this stage. It is important to note that government's humanitarian intervention to alleviate the unintended but predictable consequences of the lockdown have been an abysmal failure. The distribution of food was chaotic and disorderly, and in some cases partisan. It flouted all protocols of social distancing and prevention of the spread of the virus. Definitely no careful planning went into the implementation of this initiative, as is characteristic of this current administration. My suggestion to involve assembly members and traditional rulers, religious leaders, and civil society organizations were ignored. As the President clearly admitted, this was one of the reasons for the lifting of the lockdown. Many Ghanaians were faced with two choices: either to stay at home and die of hunger, or come out and take their chance against the deadly virus. Faced with these two choices, most Ghanaians opted for the latter. I therefore can understand and I empathize with the sports of jubilation that greeted the announcement of the President of the lifting of the partial lockdown. With a budget in excess of 1.2 billion cedis from the Stabilization Fund, I believe we could have handled this mitigation effort much better than we did.
Also, the former president suggested that the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, the SSNIT, should support contributors within this period.
My office has been flooded with correspondence from many working class people, especially in the private sector, who have not received their February and March salaries and are having a difficult time feeding and taking care of their families. The lockdown may have been lifted, but many businesses are still down and suffering. Employees are suffering too, just as the many players in the informal sector are also suffering. It makes me wonder why our Social Security and National Insurance Trust has not been responsive in this time of need of many of its contributors. Social Security contributions are essentially an insurance scheme made not just for pensions in old age before we die, they are also meant to help contributors in times of adversity such as this. Remember that not all will come out and queue for food. Not all will come out of their homes to receive the food boxes that we go around and hand over. But as has been done in other countries like St. Lucia, I think a token payment of all contributors of a certain token sum over 3 months would have afforded many the assurance of feeding their families during these abnormal times. While we wait for a clearing understanding of the factors underpinning the decision of the President to relax efforts to manage the spread of the virus, I urge all Ghanaians to continue to be responsible and not to assume that the country is out of the woods yet because of the removal of the lockdown.
So that's an interesting suggestion coming from the former president. Let's explore this further and speak to a labor consultant, Austin Game. He joins us on the phone. Mr. Game, thank you very much for your time here on NewsDesk. Now, how feasible is the suggestion by the former president for SSNIT to support contributors around this time?
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Honestly, I'm a little troubled because more than 3 weeks ago, I had made this suggestion to some people in the TUC or organized labor, and people, notable people who are even sitting on the board of SSNIT, that this is time they should do what the former president is suggesting now. I haven't seen him for close to 4 years now, so I'm not surprised. He also suggested it. It's a wise thing to do at this particular point in time. And SSNIT, if they are not, if even they are suffering guilty point of view now, they are a colossal body. They know what to do to support not vulnerable but legitimate contributors to SSNIT who are normally workers like yourself, myself, if you are not on retirement. So that is just about it, and I think it's a wise call, and people should not take it from the traditional partisan political point of view. Let's look at it and see how we can they can be of help to people.
So you said this is a wise decision, but I don't know what the law makes of this. Hold the line for me, sir. Fortunately, we've been joined by the head of corporate affairs for SSNIT, Ifwa Sarkodie. Madam, thank you very much for your time here on NewsDesk. You have heard the former president make the call. The labor expert who is also on the other line with us says this is a wise call. What is your reaction, SSNIT?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. Yes, indeed, we have taken notice of the former president's call. But the short answer to that is, I'm sure, as you know, this is a creature of law. We are governed by an act of parliament, and if I may, it's the National Pension Act 208, Act 766. All our operations, our mandate, our reach, what we can and what we cannot do, is clearly spelled out in this law. And for all these years, SSNIT has operated based on this law. And with your permission, I'd like to refer to Section 34, 70, and some other sections, that maybe specifically 34. We are enjoined by law to pay 4 benefits, and the law is specific, 4 benefits: old age pension, invalid pension, old age lump sum benefits, and survivors lump sum benefits. These are the benefits that the law clearly states out that SSNIT should pay us. And we have been true to these benefits. We have been committed to paying these benefits even during these times. As far as the former president's suggestion goes, we are simply unable to do so, not because of anything, but because of the law, which sets us SSNIT. We cannot be seen as acting contrary to what the law mandates us to do. That would constitute a breach. And so until the law changes or is tweaked or is reformatted, for lack of a better description, we can only pay benefits as prescribed by law.
Madam Sarkodie, yes, we have to work with the law, but over the years, I know that SSNIT has been engaged in the provision of social services. For instance, you've built hospitals. The law also allows you to invest. Are you saying there's no space, there's no provision whatsoever SSNIT can sort of capitalize on to provide some sort of relief for contributors around this time?
So as I have just said, the law is clear on the benefits that we can pay. Just as it is clear on the contributions that we can collect. SSNIT or the managers of SSNIT do not act on their own. Even the payment, the percentage payments, I'm sure as you know, have been clearly spelled out by law. And so as our law stands now, there isn't anywhere in the law that says we should provide unemployment benefits or we should provide benefits that result from losses of a pandemic or a disaster. I do know, and I'm sure you also do know, that in other jurisdictions this happens. And this happens because it is in their law and they follow the law to make these payments. If we are asking, as a collective, for a change or some sort of modification in the law to allow SSNIT to do this, then that's a conversation we can have. But as the law stands now, we are unable to pay because the law is clear on what benefits we can pay. We cannot add and we cannot deduct from what the law says we should do. I must say that even in these times, anybody who qualifies for any of these benefits, SSNIT is committed to fulfilling these obligations. And so if there's a member or there's a contributor who qualifies for any of these benefits, they can please walk into any of our offices and apply for these benefits, and we would pay. As I speak to you now, we continue to pay pensions. There are over 210,000 pensions who are on our pension. We are paying them all the obligations set up on us by law. We are fulfilling. And so if there is any contributor out there who qualifies for any of these benefits, as I've just explained, we will strongly encourage them to walk into any SSNIT office and apply for these benefits, and then they will be paid once we meet the qualifying conditions.
Very well. So you talk about the law. What law gives SSNIT the authority or the space, as it were, to contribute to the COVID-19 Trust Fund? I know you were at the Information Ministry, perhaps this week or last week. I saw you on television making some donation to the COVID-19 Trust Fund. How does the law provide for this?
So if you read the act tells us, or not tells us, the act makes provision that we can charge things to our administrative expenses. That is in line with international social security practices and also the ISSA convention. And making a donation to the COVID-19 fund, as you're aware, we are a workers' fund. And if we do not have workers, SSNIT has no fund. And so our job, or at this point, our support is to the general fight against the pandemic, so that our pensioners and our workers can remain strong, that they can go about their duties, and that our pensioners will not be unduly affected. And even if they are, that means that we can support the government's effort to fight this pandemic. And so it was in that sense that we made that contribution. But my understanding of what the former president was saying was that we should make individual benefit payments or individual contributor payments to contributors during this time. And I'm saying that goes into benefit payments. And the benefit payments have been clearly laid down by law as benefit payments and what we can pay. And so that is what we are paying as we speak. And we have not stopped paying that because of COVID-19.
Madam Sarkodie, hold the line for me briefly.